Hello, Utah. Dwayne Benson here for KMMU's Let's Talk Utah. Last night, President Donald Trump addressed a joint session of Congress for the first time since retaking office, telling lawmakers and the nation that America is back, while touting the flurry of actions he has taken over the first 6 weeks of his second term. Speaking for an hour and 40 minutes, the president highlighted the executive orders he has issued and laid out his vision for how Congress should begin implementing his sweeping legislative agenda. He also praised the work of Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency Task Force, or DOGE, for the drastic cuts they have enacted across the executive branch. The president earned sustained applause from Republicans and jeers from Democrats, one of whom, Texas Representative Al Green, was escorted from the chamber for interrupting the speech. Several Democrats walked out of the House chamber over the course of the address, and others protested silently with handheld signs. Dan will be discussing some of the highlights of last night's speech. Take it away, Dan.
And we're right into it. Welcome back to Dan the Eagle. I'm really excited to be here on this Wednesday. We had a little bit of a kerfuffle earlier. We tried to do it on my laptop. It didn't work. We're going to try to see if we can do that again. But we have a star panel. We have Josh Carr. We have Tyler Jeffries. We have Kendall Flake, some of the most amazing people that you're ever going to meet talking about politics. Josh, Kendall, and I are on the conservative side. And Tyler is a very logical, moderate person. So it's going to be fun to have different perspectives. We're going to be talking about the State of the Union, quote unquote, the joint address to Congress that Trump gave last night. And we're going to jump right into it because we don't have a ton of time today, but we're going to have a good show though. So let me bring in the boys, Josh, Tyler, and Kendall. Welcome to Dan the Eagle, everyone.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Thanks. Good to be here.
I didn't want to interrupt other people. That's why I didn't say anything.
That's true. We're all too excited. So really excited for you guys to all be here. Thanks again for coming back. Let's just jump right into it. Since we don't have a ton of time, I want to get to the clip specifically. So I'm assuming all of you have watched the address now. Tyler said that he watched a super clip, so he's able to get all the good parts. I know Josh and Kendall have watched it. Josh and I are absolute nerds, so I'm sure we watched it yesterday. And Kendall has picked up on it. So we're going to just jump right in. So the thing that really stuck out to me, there were several parts that I really, really liked. The first clip that I want to show is we've had a lot of State of the Union addresses or joint session of Congress where the president talks. The Democrats all stand up. The Republicans all stand up, depending on who's in office. And it's really dumb. And I've always hated the State of the Union for that reason. I mean, the workout that you must get attending one of these events must be crazy because you just got to stand up, stand up, sit down, stand up. And your hands must be tired for all the clapping. So Trump says something that I don't think any American president has ever said. And he basically just says, what we're doing here is dumb. And no matter what I do, the Democrats won't clap for it. So let's play this clip and then I'll get your guys' reaction on the back end.
This is my fifth such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
And there they are. We're very happy about that. So, Tyler, as the resident almost Democrat, how do you feel that none of the Democrats stood up for almost anything in this speech?
So I thought it was interesting. I have one quick question before I give my 30-second spiel.
Sure.
Have they ever stood before, or has there ever been a session where they've done the same thing here, where they've all only sat down, they haven't clapped?
I don't know. I would have to look up the specifics, but I'm fairly certain that there have been moments where everyone has stood. But
Because I thought it was honestly like it was a very deft political move by Trump, because if you notice everything that he says, like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, they won't clap for me. And he goes on in his speech and he claims that it has done or is doing those things. And whether you believe him or not, it's like they don't stand up, and
Yep.
it makes them look really dumb. And at I don't know, it makes them, I almost wonder if he caught wind of them, like that as a unified party, like, now we're not going to stand up, and he kind of turned it against them a little bit, because it seemed like a really good political move on his part.
So you actually like that he said that?
I think it was smart for his strategy.
Okay. Kendall, what's your reaction?
Yeah, it was just a brilliant move, honestly. And it was borne out in real time throughout the rest of the speech, where he's like, yeah, we passed a law where we're going to stop illegal immigrants who murdered people from murdering more people. And then, like, the Republicans cheer and the Democrats are all just sitting there angrily. It was really funny, too. They didn't even cheer for a bipartisan bill that most of them voted for, which was the deep fake, like making it illegal to make sexual deep fakes of people. Like, that was passed by like plenty of Democrats voted for that, and they wouldn't even cheer for something that they themselves helped with. So it's just funny. It's just like a quirk of, and it's a stupid quirk, but it's just in the last few decades of politics, you can't give the other side any credit whatsoever, because the fear is, like, if you make them look good even a little bit, then maybe more people will vote for them.
Yeah, I think that's probably the problem. And Josh, what do you take? What do you think about Trump's comments?
So I actually have to correct Donald Trump on this. The Democrats did applaud for one thing. They didn't applaud for the immigration bill. They didn't applaud for the young man who survived cancer. But what they did applaud for was Ukraine. There was actually a moment in the speech where Donald Trump talked about standing with Ukraine. He talked about the minerals deal that he's making with Zelensky right now. And they did actually clap for that. So I think that's very fitting for the Democrat Party right now. They wouldn't applaud for anyone in America, but of course they applaud for their friends in Ukraine. So Donald Trump was actually wrong on that. He was right in that, if he did amazing things for Americans, they wouldn't applaud. But as soon as we turned outward, talked about Ukraine, they were totally okay with it.
Yeah, well, let's just play the clip and see what he says. I'm just going to play it right now. You teed it up perfectly. I can tell you've been doing this for a second, so we'll just play that clip. Here it is.
With no end in sight, the United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense, with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes.
So I will correct Josh. What he's saying is he didn't do that. They're clapping because Biden sent money to Ukraine.
That's right. That's true.
But I do think it's interesting that the only time that the Democrats in unison clapped together was talking about sending money to a foreign country. And that was it. And then even after Trump says explicitly, you want to just keep going, Elizabeth Warren sits there, Pocahontas, she sits there and just keeps clapping for it. Like, she wants the war to continue for 5 more years. I'm obviously incredibly biased because I don't like Elizabeth Warren at all. Tyler, what do you make of it?
I think that maybe a bit of a straw man you set up. I don't think she's clapping because she wants the war to continue. I think it is interesting that the only time that the Democrats do clap together, like you said, is with Ukraine. Again, I almost wondered if there was a meeting behind doors and they're like, hey, this is the only thing that, like, we want to show a unified front. So we need to make sure we're all standing together. And that was the one issue. I guess they decided that they figured if he's going to talk about this, say that. I almost wonder, again, this is pure, maybe almost, this is speculation, maybe border on conspiracy, but no, to your point though, is like, yeah, I don't think that they would want the war to continue, but if they had to, then if it did go that long, that obviously they want to continue supporting.
Yeah. So the Democrats like all the money being sent to Ukraine, and that's what they're willing to clap for. Kendall, does this annoy you that the Democrats are like refusing to go along with this, or do you just see it as like a political ploy?
I mean, it's an obvious political ploy. Like I was saying earlier, they just don't want to give Donald Trump even the smallest bit of credit or the smallest bit of justification or anything that could possibly make him look good in the eyes of the American people. But it does let Trump do some very funny stuff. Like, in essence, he's like, hey, cheer if you want us to keep letting illegal aliens into the country. And well, actually, I guess the opposite. He's like, cheer if you don't want us to let more illegal criminals into the country. And then all the Republicans cheer and the Democrats just sit there looking mad. And then, like, in this case, where they do cheer for us just shoveling money into a fire, basically, in Ukraine, then the Trump just claps back so quickly. Like, this is just classic Trump. As soon as the Democrats feel like they have a beat on him, he just shuts them down with the Pocahontas comment. And then, like, the camera pans to her and you can tell she just like doesn't know what to do. So she's just like still clapping. It's hilarious. I love, like, Trump is just the master of that kind of thing.
He is. You can tell that he is a performer, and like this was his stage, right? Josh, do you think that Pocahontas should be offended at this point?
I mean, she dug her own grave. Like, this is something that she's been very consistent on, actually. So I don't think she should be offended. I think she's standing by the reactionary politics that she's participating in. The reason, fundamentally, in these speeches, why you see Republicans and Democrats applauding at the opposite times, is not actually because of any ideological divide. It's because of reactionary politics. For instance, there's really nothing in liberalism or even progressivism that says that women should have men playing in their sports. It's honestly very contradictory to feminism, which is a progressive movement. And so when Republicans took the stance of, hey, we're not going to allow that, which Donald Trump talks about in this speech, they have to react on the other side because of the fact that the Republicans have basically moved themselves into that political position. Democrats can no longer occupy the same space. And so they are forced to go on the other side, whether or not it agrees with their ideology. That doesn't really matter. It's reactionary politics. It's one of the kind of problems I see with a two-party system. But at the same time, Democrats could just be bipartisan about it. They could just say, no, like for this one, for example, they could just say, everyone and their dog understands. Ukraine cannot win this war. We know that there's going to have to be concessions. And if we keep funding Ukraine, the war is not magically going to end. What are we fighting for? That can be a bipartisan thing. It doesn't even have to be a Trump gets all the credit. It could be Congress gets credit mutually, and it can be a little bit of Biden, a little bit of Trump, whatever you want it to be. But they cannot stand to do it that way. It has to be reactionary. And the genius of Donald Trump this election cycle is because he has filled the moderate space, Democrats are then forced to take reaction that puts them on the radical side, which I would say that sending $350 billion to Ukraine is more radical than Donald Trump's position, which is let's end the war. Putin's going to get a little bit and Zelensky's going to get a lot more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that I would just push back a little bit, I guess, on the framing that Trump has, grabbed the middle. I think the Democrats have just pushed the middle out because we are not the ones who started putting men into women's sports. They are, right? And so they come up with this crazy idea and they say, hey, this is normal, do this. And we say, no, we're not being the ones who are grabbing the middle. They are simply walking away from the middle and they're walking hard left. So I would agree with that.
I think that's true. I think the one caveat I would put on that is what I see, and I'm trying to be fair to people on the left, is that a lot of these issues that become really big that once weren't big, such as even immigration or the men and women's sports, is to be fair to the left, a lot of it is kind of these fringe groups. It's really not a large percentage of them. But again, Donald Trump's genius is he looks at a fringe issue, takes the really easy position, and then Democrats are forced to kind of come out with a position that they never really had in the first place. Because, of course, some Democrats talked about, oh, yeah, we're good with men being in women's sports, but the majority no. And now today, almost all of them just in Congress are against the bill that Donald Trump or the executive order that Donald Trump passed, as opposed to maybe 4 years ago, most of them wouldn't have really cared.
Yeah, I guess there is definitely like oppositional nature to it. And speaking of opposition, Al Green, this old fart, decides to start yelling at Trump and waving his cane around, and he gets booted. So we're just gonna take a quick look at that. That was an exciting moment.
Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
So Mr. Green, the old grandpa, gets kicked out for yelling. And this is interesting because what he was yelling that got him kicked out was, "You have no mandate to cut Medicaid." That was what he was yelling. And we'll just go to Tyler for this one. Tyler, I don't think Trump has any interest in cutting Medicaid. Why do you think that this nut, this old man, is screaming at the wind like this?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. I'm not. I might have to pass a little bit on this one because I'm not as familiar. I remember Trump goes through in his speech all the things that he's going to cut, that like Doge, if that's how you pronounce it, is like, we found this fraud, found this fraud, we're spending this money here, we're spending this money here, we're going to cut all of it. But I don't remember him saying anything about Medicaid. So, and I don't know who that guy is. So it was an odd moment.
I think it was really weird, and it made the Democrats just look crazy. Like, why are you yelling this stuff? Trump is not talking about Medicaid. Like, he didn't even mention it. Why are you yelling it? So Tyler, being the resident almost Democrat, what would you have yelled in that situation?
Well, I'm not much of a yeller, so I probably wouldn't have yelled anything.
What critique would you have given, though?
I can't remember what part of the what stage of speech this was in, but at least what I'm thinking of, at least what makes the most sense, right, is when he is starting to list all these things that are being cut, right?
Sure.
And I think my inclination on that is like, I think it's a good thing that there should be obviously an accountability, and that there should be an accountability of some kinds to make sure that programs maybe once were useful but are no longer useful, but are still siphoning money away and are just like basically bleeding the system. There should be accountability there. They should be cut if they're not meeting the purposes that they need to be, or if the American people ultimately decide that we don't want to be spending that money there. But it does make me a little sad because I haven't done any research, but like a lot of the stuff he did were humanitarian aids for countries and places that probably need a lot of support. And again, I don't know the research, but if those are places and funds and organizations that are helping people and that are getting cut, I think that's ultimately a sad thing.
So your critique would be then you don't like the idea of like foreign aid to other countries that is like humanitarian should be cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Josh, what would you say to that?
There's a balance. So I think that everything, and I think Trump has been consistent with this, everything has to be America first. And so if we're getting aid, I'm personally not so I am a MAGA Republican, but I'm not a MAGA Republican that thinks we should cut all aid to everybody. And the reason why I say that is I truly believe right now we're looking at a foreign policy kind of atmosphere where if we kind of move back in certain areas, China and Russia will move into those places. And so if we're sending money to someone, and if there's concrete evidence that it is increasing our influence in that sphere of the world in an appropriate way, and it's keeping China out, then I think we should keep supporting them. But humanitarian aid for humanitarian aid's sake, I don't think is productive. Obviously, I don't need to say this because many people I've heard all of it, but a lot of this aid is just kind of disguised as leftist propaganda, leftist advocacy in other countries trying to push transgenderism. In Guatemala, you had $2 million sent to Guatemala for transgender surgeries, many more all around the world, not just for trans stuff, but for abortion. I don't want my tax dollars anywhere near that. I don't think Tyler does either, by the way. So I kind of just say that in general. But I think that my general sense, especially when it comes to USAID, which is where a lot of these cuts are coming from, is that we should almost tear it all down and then reevaluate where are we sending money. As of now, we're looking at decades and decades of us just adding on more kind of, it's almost as if it's a subscription funding where we signed up for a subscription 20 years ago and no one even remembers that we signed up for it. I think we need to cancel all of our subscriptions and then reevaluate what we want to do and not do.
This sounds like a Rocket Money ad. I don't know if
Exactly.
you guys get those ads.
Yes, Elon Musk is the Rocket Money.
He's Rocket Money.
It's great. And it's honestly, I've talked about it a lot. It's my single favorite thing that Donald Trump is doing right now. It is so needed. There actually is precedence for it. It's happened before in the United States. And every time it's happened, we've seen economic growth and reduction in the deficit spending. So I hope we're going into another age of that.
I would have voted for Trump either way, but as soon as I learned about Doge and Elon Musk getting involved, I was so excited because I worked for the state of Utah, and just on the state level, I've seen how much money is wasted. And I've also seen how much money we randomly get from the federal government. I remember we were doing this. I was working for the legislature in 2021, and the American Rescue Plan got passed, and Utah's budget was completely balanced and everything was great. But out of nowhere, we got something like 60, I don't know if it was 60 billion, but it was a lot of money. Like billions of dollars just showed up. And it was like, okay, we have all this money. What do we do with it? And then we had to figure out where to spend the money that we had gotten from the federal government without us even asking for it. And so it was like, there has to be accountability for how our money is being spent. So
yeah, can I say one more thing on that too? I almost forgot, Dan. Specifically on Medicaid, which is what Congressman Green kind of walks out about. A lot of people get confused between Medicaid and Medicare. Medicaid, and I think that this should be the standard for everything we use. If you really look at Medicaid, Medicaid exists to make healthcare more affordable and higher quality. It has never done either of those things if you really look into it, but it is bankrupting our country. It's not Medicare. That's something different. A lot of people don't understand the difference. But if you look, Medicaid has never made healthcare cheaper for Americans, and it has never increased the quality. So my question is, why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars to fund it when we could completely cut it?
Where's Representative Green? I want him to start yelling at Josh.
Yeah, exactly.
Get Josh out of here. Get that.
But he just wants to yell. He doesn't want to have
around.
a conversation. So
I
he wouldn't come.
just think this is a great example because Trump and Musk have talked over and over again about how they're not going to cut Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. And Democrats just lie. They just lie nonstop, and they just will say things that are blatantly false as if they were true. And the thinking is Americans are just used to the people around them telling the truth. And so they'll just believe when someone tells them a blatant lie. And that's kind of what Representative Green is doing here, inadvertently or not. I think it's on purpose, because why else would you just lie? But it's honestly disgusting that Democrats will take advantage of people's trust to just spew falsehoods to try to score political points.
Speaking of disgusting, this is my favorite moment of the entire night. And the fact that no Democrats stood for this actually pisses me off. So this is the scene where DJ, this cute little kid who's 11, who survived brain cancer. You can see the scars on his head. I don't think he's fully like functional either. Like you can tell he's just kind of like awkward and stuff. Trump literally lets him be a part of the Secret Service just as a gesture of goodwill. This is like the easiest thing to stand up and cheer for. Like it's so simple. And the Democrats don't stand for it. I'll play the video and then we'll talk about it after. So this is him right after he gets the Secret Service, and this is the leader of the Secret Service. Oh, And you can see in the background there. Yeah, you can see right here. None of the Democrats are standing. None of them. None of the Democrats stood or applauded. Like, I was actually so like touched by the video. Like, you see DJ just like give this big burly man a hug, and he's like, thank you. You know, like, this kid is probably going to die in a few years. They're just doing this act of kindness. It's purely kindness to this kid, and they can't find it in their hearts to clap for this kid. It drives me insane.
But Dan,
I'm livid. Kendall, I'm livid.
Dan, I thought Republicans were all evil racists who hate black people. I thought all black people had to vote for Kamala Harris. This clip doesn't even make sense to me.
Who knows if his dad voted for Kamala? He doesn't mention. This is just like a simple thing that you just clap. Okay, you should just clap, don't you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I agree. It's weird. Again, like I think I've talked about this too much, but it's hammering home that I feel like he just knew that they were not going to clap for anything he said. So he's like, I'm just gonna make them look as stupid as possible. And like, yeah, I'm sure
He did.
I'm sure he probably was going to do this anyways, like, because I think he probably heard their story. But like over and over throughout the entire speech, he talks about like stories of heroism, right? Of stories of how like of other even of like kindness and things like that. And like he gives a really good like charismatic closing to the speech, I remember. And it's like, it's like, yeah, like it kind of makes it made me, even though I don't love Trump, I was like, yeah, America,
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of that. And like that moment and some of the other stories in this moment with the kid, I feel like it was very tailored. He was like, I'm gonna make the and again, I don't love Democrats, and I think it was smart, but he was like, I'm gonna make Democrats look as dumb as possible. It makes me wonder if he knew that they were not gonna do that.
Oh yeah. So. I think he like the setup was nothing I do is gonna make you clap, and the Democrats are like, yeah, huh? I'm gonna
really what it felt like.
And then he's like, oh yeah, black kid, brain cancer survivor. And they're like,
they're like, we can't clap because he's saying it. They're getting all bad about it.
Exactly, like you've seen like the meme where like the guy is like going to click two of the buttons, and like one of them is black kid cancer survivor, the other one is hate Trump. And Democrats are like, which one do I take?
I can't do it.
Josh, what do you think about this? This was my favorite moment.
Yeah, it was really touching. I thought it was great. I actually talked about it on my show today, but I just think Democrats are really out of touch right now. I think that they're really struggling to find kind of their footing and who their base is. They think that, so if you look at the polling, about 15% of America is in that like really progressive mode. And I think they're really catering to that 15%, which politically doesn't really make sense. I actually have the numbers up here right now. CBS News /YouGov poll that just came out after Trump's speech, 76% of Americans who watched it approve of his speech. And so if you're looking at that as a Democrat, I just don't understand how you double down on not clapping for cancer survivors. I was actually watching MSNBC as well. This was on my show today. And one of the hosts, I kid you not, she talks about this touching moment. And this is the conclusion she got. The conclusion she got from him was, I'm happy he wants to be a cop. I wonder what will happen if he ever has to defend the Capitol from Donald Trump supporters. That's how she tied it back from cancer survivor back to January 6th. That's what they do every time. And I really think it is just a symptom of Democrats not understanding that 15% of progressives is not 50%. It's 15, guys. And they think it's a larger number. If they keep thinking it's a larger number, they're going to lose more elections.
I totally agree. And I've heard from a lot of people that being an oppositional government is actually easier because you don't actually have to govern. You can just point at the dumb things that inevitably will happen. But the things that Democrats are pointing at and like refusing to go along with it just makes them look stupid. So they're not even good at being oppositional, which is crazy because my entire life they've been incredibly effective. But now they're just like, I don't know, this shell, this husk of what they used to be, which is great for me. I love it. I freaking hate the Democrats. I think their party is actually satanic, but I'm not supposed to give my opinion. I'm just the interviewer. Okay, last clip, and then we'll wrap this up. This was the funniest line by far, in my opinion. So Democrats didn't want to secure the border at all. So what they did is they said, well, we need everybody to do a bill. and this bill will solve the problem at the border. It has nothing to do with executive orders. It has nothing to do with who the president is. The only reason why illegal immigrants are coming to our country is because there's a problem with the legislature, blah, blah, blah. And Trump just absolutely, he just destroys that whole narrative. Let's check it out.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Legend.
Oh, man. Woo-hoo. That clip, I was laying there and I was like, let's go. I was so stoked for that. So they didn't need new legislation. They just needed a new president. And this will be the last little round that we go through. So I'll go through all of you guys. What are your thoughts overall with the Trump presidency? What is he doing well? And what would you want him to improve? And just do that in like 30 seconds. And we'll start with Josh.
Yeah, I thought the speech was amazing. I think what he's doing right now is perfect. My one critique for Donald Trump is, and it's hardly a critique because he's been president for 45 days, but it is everything he's done through executive action, he's got to do in the legislature because he's got about a year before Congress starts campaigning for next year. And then chances are Republicans, if you look at it historically, are going to lose the House. And so what I would say to Donald Trump is you got to make permanent change. Everything he talked about in that speech is fantastic. As I said, again, 76% approved Trump's speech about immigration specifically that he was just talking about. The same poll says 77% back his immigration and border policy. So he's got the people on his side. He just needs to, right now, while he's hot, keep going, get it, passed into law so we can have these things forever and not just have a 4-year one and done.
Kendall?
So things that I like. I love that he's tackling all the 80-20 issues, like transgender people, like men playing in women's sports. That's an 80-20 issue that he's tackling really well. And the illegal immigrants pouring into the country. That's an 80-20 issue, and he's tackling it very well. I wish that he would. Well, I think my number one overall favorite thing that he's doing is Doge. That's just generational thing that could be.
You just mentioned 3 things.
I'm sorry. I just had to throw Doge in there. I just had to. Things that he could be doing better. I'm personally not a fan of tariffs. If we're trying to combat inflation, then putting tariffs on some of our largest trading partners is not the right way to go. I think tariffs can be great for bullying countries into doing what we want, but just doing tariffs for the sake of tariffs is actually bad for the economy. So I wish he would kind of cool it with that. But if I have to deal with some tariffs in order to get Doge and the border under control and men out of women's sports, it's a small price to pay.
Tyler?
Yeah, I am not an economist. I'm not a politician. But so I can't say for certain what the effects are going to be of some of his things. But I will say that at least historically, he was the only president in a long while in his last term to not start a new conflict. A new conflict in the world did not start under his presidency, which is huge points in his favor. So if he can keep that going through the second term, keep not only not prevent another conflict, but maybe even potentially end the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, that would be awesome. And so I think that's huge points in Trump's favor. One thing that maybe my critique on him is, I think in his attempt to appeal to his base and in his charismatic attempt, and this is just his style, I suppose, he tends to lie very, very frequently, or at the very least exaggerate things. And just at least for my personality, it makes me lower my trust incredibly. And I think I just wish that he was more honest in his approach, both with the public, and I just hope that he's doing it in private, but I don't have a lot of confidence in that.
He's quite the bloviator. That's true. Well, I think he's freaking perfect. I'd never think Trump lies. Tariffs are amazing, and he can do everything through executive action. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. Trump is perfect. No, I agree. I think those are all fair critiques. Well, boys, thank you so much for joining me. We had up to 5 viewers consecutively. That's amazing. Look at us. Right now we're at 4. What's up, 4 people?
Beautiful.
You've been listening to KMMU. I forgot to do this ad. I needed to do it earlier. Oh, well. Main Street Media Utah. We are live on X, YouTube, Rumble, and our website, kmmu.org. You can call in and ask Josh, Kendall, or Tyler a question by calling in 385-899-2134. I don't think anyone will call. No one has ever called. So
If you
we're just
call,
gonna
I will
leave
give
it
you
there.
$1.
Well, maybe they
Kendall will
haven't
give it
called.
to you. But I'm not going to worry about the call unless it happens in literally the next 30 seconds because I have to get going. But thanks, guys, for joining me. Thank you guys for joining us online as well. We will catch you